This is a bonus video. Hello everyone and welcome. It's been a little while since I've done a book review, so in order to catch up, I've decided to do a bonus video for you guys. I normally post videos every Monday, Wednesday and Friday with a vlog on Sundays. This week you're getting an extra video because I need to do some reviews. I need to catch up. In the spirit of needing to catch up, today I've decided to do a triple book review. We are going to review 3 books. The Memory Collectors by Kim Neville, Conventionally Yours by Annabeth Albert, and Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. Because I am reviewing 3 books, we won't have time to get into a spoiler section, so I'm sorry for those of you who love spoilers, but today I'm going to give you the title of the book, the author, the age rating, the genre, my star rating, and then 3 spoiler-free cons and 3 spoiler-free pros to help you to determine if this is the sort of book that you would like to pick up in the future. So, without any further ado, let's begin. So the first book we're going to talk about is this book, The Memory Collectors by Kim Neville. This is a 2021 new release book. It is also an adult fantasy. It is also a dual perspective. So in this book, we are following 2 perspectives, Ev, short for Evelyn, but she goes by Ev, and Harriet. Ev is born with a rare magical ability to be able to sense emotions that are coming off of inanimate objects, I should say. And she believes she is the only person around in the world that has this ability. Then she comes across an older woman by the name of Harriet, who it turns out she has this ability as well. What separates Ev from Harriet is that Harriet is a self-confessed hoarder. Harriet would like to take all of the objects that she has, find out which ones present with the most positive of emotions, and set all of them up in a museum so that when customers come in, they can be affected by the positivity of these objects and walk away feeling really good about themselves. So Harriet eventually ends up hiring Ev to help her to sort through her objects, sorting through the negative emotion objects that are taken away and keeping the positive emotional objects for her museum. The star rating I gave this book was 3.5 stars. So my first spoiler-free con for The Memory Collectors by Kim Neville is that it is a slow start. Yes, my friends, there were multiple occasions where I was considering DNFing this book, especially to begin with. There just really wasn't a lot going on in the first third of the book, and I found it to be a lot more character building than being plot driven. I'm a much more of a plot driven reader personally myself, so take this con with a grain of salt. My second spoiler free con for this book would have to be the story itself. While I really appreciated and even grew to love the magic system, I felt that having this magic system in mind and trying to find a story that would fit around it, Kim Neville had many options and choices and avenues which to go down with this magic system in mind. I felt that she went for one that just really, to be honest, wasn't to my taste, but I also think objectionally that she could have gone a completely different route. My final spoiler-free con for this book would have to be that the action-packed sequences do not begin until the 3-quarter mark. Being that this book is a fantasy, let alone an adult fantasy book, you expect for there to be action-packed sequences. This was not the case for the first 3 quarters. In fact, the first 3 quarters of this book read more like a contemporary, so that did very much let me down. Now on to 3 spoiler-free pros for this book, and my first spoiler-free pro, interestingly enough, is similar to the con in that now let's focus on that climax, the final climax that occurs at the end of this book. I was blown away at how amazing the final quarter of this book was with the climax, the high action, the high drama that occurs at the end, considering everything else that Kim Neville gave me for the first 3 quarters of this book. I did not expect it to be as entertaining as it was, and it was. High drama, high action, everything that you could want in a final climax. My second spoiler-free pro for this book would have to be the magic system. The ability to be able to sense emotions and the energy of those emotions that are radiating off of objects. This is something that I haven't read before in fiction, so I really appreciated seeing it done. My final spoiler-free pro for this book would have to be a reveal we get at the end, which is revolving around Ev. So from the beginning all the way through to the end, we're getting little clues here and there regarding Ev about something that has happened in her past. But what it is, we don't know. But once we got the reveal, man, what is it amazing. This is a book that proves that sometimes it is worth getting through the slog to get to some amazing things that go on at the end. My rating for this book was 3.5 stars. The next book we're going to be talking about is this book, Conventionally Yours by Annabeth Albert. This is an adult LGBTIQ plus book, and I gave this book 5 stars. For the premise of this book, once again, we have a dual perspective. This time, we are following Alden and Conrad. Sorry, I had to look there. Alden and Conrad. Conrad is your typical jock guy who just so happens to love an RPG card game known as Odyssey. He is also gay, he's out, he's proud, no one really cares, it is what it is, which was fantastic. The other perspective, Alden considers himself to be an RPG gaming nerd. His words, not mine. And he also suffers from very major anxiety. These two end up going on a road trip together because the leader of their RPG gaming club, Professor Tuttle, has given them tickets to enter into a countrywide competition for this game, and the only way the two of them can get there is by taking a car and doing a road trip. So they do that and they learn a lot more about each other along the way. I just felt like this was a fantastic book, but why did I think this was the case? Let's get into my thoughts and feelings by giving you 3 spoiler-free cons. My first spoiler-free con is the first 2 chapters, and I'll explain why. Because outside of the LGBTIQ plus side of this book, we are focusing on the RPG card game Odyssey, and I am not an RPG card gamer by any stretch of the imagination. I found the first 2 chapters to be really tough to get through because Annabeth Albert really just throws you in there without explaining anything about the game. And so it can feel incredibly jarring and off-putting considering you don't know what the heck is going on here. That was the only spoiler-free con that I had, but I did some research to give you some more well-rounded cons by going over to Goodreads and looking up which complaints were reported the most. And one of the biggest complaints that people have in general is that there are no women in the RPG card Odyssey game group that Professor Tuttle is hosting. Now, I have a response to this. Technically, this complaint is true. There are no women in the game. However, there is a character in this book that is simply referred to as they and them. And to me, I just always personally viewed this character as being born, assigned the gender at birth of female. So I just kind of looked at it that way. Okay, it's they and them, and I respect that, but they were born as female, so there's the... I don't want to sound disrespectful in saying that, so please don't think I am. Not only am I a part of the LGBTIQ plus community, obviously, but I'm a massive advocate for us, so I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, but I'm just saying, to me, I kind of saw it as, okay, her gender that was assigned at birth was female, so technically we could say there was a female that was there, but I don't really know this because Annabeth Albert didn't go out of her way to make a point of what gender this they-them was assigned when they were born. I just pictured it that way. So if I'm right in saying that, then there you go. If not, I understand this complaint and it is quite valid. And the third spoiler-free con, again, is one that I did some research on, and one thing or 2 things that came up rather commonly, but I'm putting them together, is 1, that it's a trope-filled book, and 2, that it reads like Annabeth Albert's other books. I'm going to put the second one aside very quickly because this is the only book I've read of Annabeth Albert's. To address the other one, that it is trope-filled, yeah, 100%, it is trope-filled. I still thought it was a fantastic book despite it being trope-filled. I think the tropes were handled very well. There is a difference between tropes being done in a slightly different way that it can still be executed really well versus a cliche that is exactly the same and done over and over again to the point that it becomes tiresome and dull to read. I don't think these tropes took away from the fact that it was an amazing book, but that's just me personally. My first spoiler-free pro, and yes, this is my own individual first spoiler-free pro, is from chapter 3 onwards. It's almost as though Annabeth Albert made a conscious decision to start assisting those of us who don't understand the game. Because anytime the game came up from chapter 3 onwards, onwards, it was explained in a way that you either knew exactly what was going on or you could easily infer what was going on. My second spoiler-free pro for this book is the anxiety representation, or high anxiety representation, done really well. I think that Annabeth Albert did an amazing job with high anxiety representation when it came to Alden's perspective. I started feeling anxious reading his perspective. That's how well she did. My final spoiler-free pro would have to be the perspective of Conrad. While I appreciated the perspective of Alden with the high anxiety representation as a character and the character arcs that they both go through, I certainly loved Conrad's a heck of a lot more, and I loved Conrad on his own and with his character that he arc that he went through. And this book was definitely, in my last reading vlog, pitted as my book of the week for a very good reason. It was just outstanding. It's definitely one of my top 10 reads of all time. And the final book that we're going to be talking about today is this book, Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. This is an adult straight romance book, and I gave this book 2 stars. Let me explain why I'm saying straight romance book. The reason I'm saying that is because I have 2 separate goals. One, to read 12 LGBTIQ+ books by the end of the year, and the other is to read 6 straight romance books by the end of the year. That's why I'm saying it that way, so that you guys know, but also to keep myself on track with that goal. And with that goal, this is my 5th out of 6 straight romance books that I've read, so I'm well on track. Are you ready for this? This is a Mr. Francy original premise of Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. This is a dual perspective. We follow 2 characters by the names of, funny enough, Josh and, well, Hazel. Hazel is a very eccentric character. She's very much an individual. She knows that she is. She doesn't care. She's happy and proud that she is, and great for her. She has known Josh ever since they were in college together. They've never dated, but she's always had a crush on him. Many years later, they meet up at a mutual friend's party and they start getting reacquainted with each other. Because Hazel is single and Josh is newly single, they both decide to set each other up on dates to prove that they don't need to date each other. Okay, my first spoiler-free con for this book would have to be a time jump that occurs right at the beginning of the final climax. This is something that, in my mind, this is completely my own subjective opinion, in my mind, is unacceptable. So, we get to a point where we are dealing with a climax. This climax is literally about to begin. As it is about to begin, the chapter ends. The following chapter begins years down the track. And we basically, to keep this spoiler free, have whoever's perspective we're following say to us, well, now that it's been 6 years later, basically it turned out that this, and this happened, and we're now over here. And we don't get to see this climax actually happen. That is an absolute no-no in my book, and I was well on my way, you guys, to giving this book a 3, a 3.5, or even a 4-star rating. I dropped my rating to 2 stars on that one con alone. My second spoiler-free con is based on an assumption that I made owing to the title. So, once again, the title of this book is Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. To me, this title screams, we're going to follow 2 people called Josh and Hazel who are going to write a guide on how not to date. Right? No. I don't know why it is even called Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. My final spoiler-free con for this book is rather nitpicky, but there you go. I listened to this book as an audio book. The audio narrator that did Josh's perspective did Hazel's voice in a way that I found to be incredibly disrespectful to Hazel as a character and the book in general. What do I mean by this? The way that the audio narrator that did Josh's perspective was narrating Hazel's voice, it was like a cross between a ditzy woman and a ditzy woman who has a ton of sarcasm, all dripped together in honey in one. And it was just not, in my opinion, what the book called for. My first spoiler-free pro for this book, therefore, has to be the character of Hazel. Any female character, be they protagonist or side character, if they can be so strong within themselves that they don't care what anyone else thinks, they are them and they celebrate that, I'm in love. My second spoiler-free pro about this book is the animal representation, the fact that Hazel is an animal lover. And when I say Hazel's an animal lover, I don't mean it came up in conversation. Someone said, do you like animals? And she said, sure, of course I do. No, I mean that she lives with a fish, a dog, a bird, and something else that I don't remember what it was, and she can't imagine living without them. However, unfortunately, as I said earlier, this book did receive 2 stars because those are the only pros really that I took away from the book. Because of the fact that this book received 2 stars and because this is the 3rd Christina Lauren book that I have read, this was the proverbial guillotine saying goodbye to Christina Lauren. I will not be reading their books anymore. They will not be featuring on my channel. I read 3 of their books. I gave them a red hot go, but what I've come to realize is for many and varying reasons, they are just not the authors for me. But in the meantime, that is where I am going to leave it, letting you guys go with peace, blessings, and so much love. I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'll see you again soon. Mwah! Thank you so much for watching, good night, and happy reading!